A happy pre-Thanksgiving afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of Flyer and Ice, brought to you by the Heat Ratio Sports Network. In honor of Nicky Nuts, we will call this the Frank Bathe episode. Now you know why I'm called Dan Old School Green, ladies and gentlemen. Frank Bathe. I went to bathe over Huffman. Now, before I introduce my crew, I just want to acknowledge the Flyers Extreme Facebook group. We are teaming up with them and going live on their page, live as we speak. They are a great group of people run by they're a great group of people. It's just an amazing group, good people. They communicate with each other all the time. It's just a fun group to be associated with. I encourage you to join their page. Please also follow us and subscribe to Flyer and Ice on YouTube, both on the Heat Ratio Sports channel and our new Flyer and Ice YouTube page. And share with your friends and family this show. It can be found on all podcasting channels like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Now that the commercial break is over, I want to tell everyone I am joined, as always, by Vance, Mr. Smooth Crew, Nikki the Scout Tosti, and our special guest, Dave Shades Gloeckner of Betting for Breakfast fame. Dave, it's been long overdue. Thanks for joining us. Please tell the viewers your resume, please.
Well, guys, first, thanks to having me. I remember when we did a little bit of this, probably right before the playoffs last season, right in the middle of it. Remember, Dan, me and you were on that Islanders comeback?
Correct.
And they came back and took the Bruins. Good times. I always love talking the pucks with you guys. Appreciate being here. Yeah. All right. I do a few things. Been in the sports broadcast world for a little while now. Right out of college, I did a radio show out of Rowan University over here in Jersey. Then I went over to WNJ, and we did a show for about 3 years, and then brought it back when podcasting started getting hot, and started a show called Fourth and Go with Mark Drumheller, who you've probably seen all over different sports outlets, Fox the Gambler, and some others, now writing for Yahoo Sports. And then together we moved off, and we saw the world starting to the sports landscape changing. You know, you can bet from your phone. You can bet from, New Jersey now and all the different states. And we started really hone our craft and opened the show about 2 years ago called Betting for Breakfast. And, yeah, as you mentioned earlier, we had you guys on. But that focus there is a lot on college football. But when college football dies, we definitely hit the other sports. And then still recently, we're over on the Sharp app, which really is a great spot for a lot of analytical and data that you can get for any sport that you're looking to bet on. And then we hit it with Heat Ratio, just like you guys. Got a few shows over there. Most recently, Philly Bets. We do the Wednesday night show talking about the Eagles and their upcoming games. So that's a lot, but that's what we do, and that's why I'm glad to be part of a Heat Ratio team here today.
Nah, and you are always welcome. The invite is open as always. Now, before I get started, we'll call the question segment brought to you by NV Streams. If you guys haven't cut cable, you should. NV Streams blows the competition away. Stay away from Hulu Plus. Stay away from YouTube TV. NVStreams702.com. Check them out. Mention Flyer and Ice, and you will get a discount for sure. Now, Dave, let's get down to it. What got you into the betting part of sports to begin with? And do you find it to be a negative connotation by the people you know? And the reason I bring that up is I have a very good friend and fraternity brother that's essentially a professional gambler. He's brilliant. He reminds me of you and Mark, but he doesn't do it in the broadcasting. He actually does it for a living. And he would actually tell me that, like, at cocktail parties events, his wife says, "Do not talk about what you do." And I was just curious because I know that's kind of your world. Is there that angle to it for you?
It's an interesting question and great question. Yes and no. So, I mean, I work for the military. I work for the U.S. Navy, and it's where my focus is. Supporting the sailors every day. But yeah, well, everybody knows I do a podcast, and what I do behind the scenes is all good and fair. But that's why I'm very much. I would be like your friend Drew there. It's not something I go around. I do it for fun. Now, a lot of times it's a competition for me to really, push myself to get that extra knowledge and, be able to, get something right. It's like it's almost, we used to compete a lot growing up. I'm sure you guys played some sports, and now you got this. And that's kind of why I got back into it. It's my competitive juices flowing. But as far as admitting that, what we do, no, I have no issue doing that. But I'm not probably as big as I'm not as big as your guys in the back scene. I'm doing it more as a hobby and fun. And I'm an engineer. So I love numbers. I love analytics. And that kind of is what drives me and keeps me awake at night, thinking about those things. How can I get an advantage? Because advantages are out there. Stats are out there. And if you can just be a little bit ahead of the game, that's why we talk on the Betting for Breakfast show, catching some pre-lines when they first come out. Mark and I text every Sunday as soon as college football lines come out for the next week, which lines are ripe to get. And we try and be on the right side of the movement. It's similar to betting here in the NHL as well when lines open the next day. But back to your point, no, I can understand the context that it can give sometimes, and I would respect your buddy for just saying, hey, day trader, whatever. You can call yourself what you want if you're a professional like that. For me, you can call me what you want. I don't care. It doesn't affect me.
All right. That's an excellent answer. Vance.
Dave, we hear the term responsible gaming a lot when it comes to, betting. What does that look like to you? What advice would you give anybody that's out there that may potentially be interested in, dabbling into the world of sports betting?
Yeah, that's awesome. So first off, have a bankroll, separate bankroll from what you do in your life. I have a separate checking, savings account, whatever you want to call it, on the side. Doesn't affect my family. It's my thing that I play with. And then from there, really be smart about it, right? What I've learned in my betting and where I've gone wrong at times is, I like too many things. And, but the ones I really like, I'll win. And then the other ones I don't win. And all of a sudden I break even or lose because I just wanted to bet everything. Really, if you're going to do that, have a tiered approach. Pick your A games, pick your top 3, say on a Sunday, put your 3-4 units on that. If you just want the Sunday night game just for a little action, no matter what, if you didn't love it, was one of the first 3, play it as a 1 unit. Really have that gap between the games you love and the games you want to do for fun. Because a lot of novice bettors just want to bet everything because it's fun. It's on TV. I agree. But have that gap between, do your research, get your A games, have that gap between them. And then lastly, sometimes you got to shut it down. And what I mean by that is you're going to have swings. Don't try and get it back. The next day, you're going to hate yourself. Take a step away for a day or two, come back with a clean mind, and you'll still have money in your account. That's a good thing. Sometimes people try and double, triple, quadruple up when they've been down for the day. You know what? It's a process. It's a long process. So those are my tips for anybody coming into it. Enjoy it. Otherwise, if you're going to sit here and really do this day to day, it's going to drive you nuts. If you're trying to make a living off it, do it with some side money. Have some fun.
Love it.
I totally agree with everything you're saying. And I think when it comes to hockey, if you've got people that have an expertise and a background in watching NHL games, bet what don't just bet the stats, the numbers, who's in first place, who's in last place, who's going to come over the top and beat who. But like, for instance, last night and we've talked about this. I talked about this with Dan when the Flyers lost to Dallas. I think Dallas is a really good hockey team. They have a really shitty record, but I took them last night at +1.5 to beat Edmonton and at home, and they did.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just about what and what you see, rather than getting wrapped up in all these other things like who's in first place, who's in last, who's good and who's not. But with that said, who's your favorite to win the cup? You have any dark horses that you love for value? Do you ever target like league awards, like Hart Trophy, Vezina Trophy, for example?
For sure. So yeah, I mean the cup right now it's fluctuating, right? It's always changing. If you look at ESPN, they pushed an article out earlier in the week about how, they're starting to adjust for better teams. Like the Ducks are starting to come up a little bit, obviously. You've seen the Panthers play better, Hurricanes, some of these teams that they're starting to adjust for. But the one team they're not adjusting much for is the Avalanche. They're still the favorites in Vegas. They might have, you get them at 600 at the beginning of the season. They're around 650 now. What you're seeing at betmgm.com is you're seeing 19% of the tickets being held on the Avalanche, 25% of the money. So they have a heavy lean on Colorado. I'm not someone, you guys know the NHL. We know it. I can't take favorites. I just, not for a long term like that. You get me in a situation that the Avalanche are that good come, the conference semifinals, maybe I'll start to lean that way. But just last year, look at Montreal as 8 seed come up out of nowhere and make the Stanley Cup finals. I know Tampa Bay eventually won, and they were one of the favorites, but it's hard to put money on favorites as cup favorites. So I did eye up a few dogs, and I do have a couple leans here that I would say I'm still in the Vegas boat. And I know that, they're not looking great right now, but the addition of Jack Eichel, I think, has kind of not caught up to the market yet. You can still get them at plus 1,000 in some areas. And Dan, as you know, we've talked about it before, this is a team that loves to lead the league in Corsi percentage, loves to just fire shots on net. They're 20th in the league right now in that area. I think they have some improvement ahead. I think if you want to take a long shot, I think Vegas is a good one still. Toronto's another one, a team that really never comes through in the clutch. We know you've never seen them play a big game in your life. Austin Matthews, those guys, they just don't get a chance to shine because they get knocked out in the first round. But really, they have a goal differential. They're expected 53 goals right now. They've only scored 32. They have this wide margin. They're being really undervalued. So plus 1,100 there. And then the last one, I don't know about you guys, but the Islanders, they're crap, right?
They stink.
But they played what? 2 home games. 2 home games, right? They've only played 2 home games. They were on the road forever. They have some COVID issues, injury issues. A preseason Stanley Cup favorite now down to 25-1, only 7 points out of a last playoff spot. If you want to have a little fun, I don't think the Islanders are a bad long shot, if you ask me, long shot. And then the last point Nick, I usually do try and play at the beginning of the year. I'll play the Vezina, I'll play the Calder. Last year I did have Kirill Kaprizov, the rookie that won it from Minnesota, but I don't play them midseason. Not a lot, maybe towards the end again, but right now I'm probably just riding my preseason bet, seeing if they roll.
Because the odds probably aren't there in the midseason, right?
Yeah, they don't fluctuate like these do, right? There's Vegas is still trying to find out who's who as far as players go, and they're not moving much. You're right. You're exactly right.
Now, Dave, Christian Carroll is asking, based on the state of the Flyers now, how off do you think the Flyers are from the Cup within 5 years?
Well, because of what Fletcher did last year in the offseason, I think they have accelerated the schedule a little bit. You always had this gap of Voracek, Giroux, young guys, and you weren't able to really fill that. And they were getting old while the other guys were still getting experience. I think to be able to, chop off some of that, I think you've accelerated a little bit, and you've seen the rebirth of Carter Hart. That's what wins NHL Stanley Cups. And if we can get that Carter Hart, I think 5 years is possible. You heard the news today, Morgan Frost coming up. I'm sure we'll talk about that. There's still talent in this farm system. And I think, I really do think they're starting to set themselves up in a good salary cap position. I think it is possible. The hardest part is this is a beast of a division. The Metro is just nasty. So, but I think 5 years within 5 years is actually doable. We ride the Flyers roller coaster from year to year, make the playoffs miss. And we thought we had that hot streak 2 years ago when we had the number 1 seed in the East. So that came out of nowhere. It's possible. 5 years is possible.
Christian, I hope Dave answered that for you. I think we're all on the same page. We do like some of the talent that's in the minors. York, let's pray Frost makes the jump that Farabee did. We've been praying for that. So, yeah, hopefully, and as Dave mentioned, the free agent money is going to be freed up to maybe make some moves down the road. So, Dave, when you first started this betting concept, was it a young guy's bravado? I know sports. I'm going to bet this game, that game. And how has it evolved, and what type of tools do you now use to enhance your abilities?
Yeah, great question. Like, I mean, again, yeah, of course, it started probably college. We're getting those little white tickets. Remember them back in the day? The parlay tickets. You fill them out. Nobody ever wins those. But and then it, evolved into some online stuff. And it was a little bravado probably early on, and until you lose a little bit and start to learn that you just can't plug and play and just act like you know everything, because guess who knows everything? Vegas. You actually got to get smart, and that's when it more turned into and profession is the wrong word, but more of an area where you studied and you took your time. I'll give an example. On Saturdays when we talk betting for breakfast, if you talk college football, there's 100 games on the slate. There's 130 Division I teams. So just say they all play that week, 65 games. I'm not going to bet 65 games, but how am I going to figure out which ones really have the decided disadvantage? Or I go through a big model, and I come with my top 5. And then from those top 5, I probably then start doing research on just those 5 games. Who's in, who's out, what new starters are being plugged, who's got COVID. So really a filter situation. So now it has turned. It was a little bravado, but now it's really turned into a research market and really just trying to, find my own angles. But when you say that, you got to use people's research out there. And for hockey, I love the athletic.com. I subscribe to it. I fully admit that. I think they punch out great stuff. And if you've seen, they've transitioned into the betting world. They have a great NHL writer over there. I forget his name right now, but I read them daily. Also, moneypuck.com. I really like their stats, and I like their after game stats. So really, they adjust for what the game is. Like last night with our game, Tampa. You're going to adjust for the shot percentage in the third period when you're down 3-0. So I really like what moneypuck.com does. And I also look at Natural Stat Trick. They do a couple things with a couple different stats they've come up on their own with scoring percentage chances. So those are the 3 I kind of use definitely. But if you look at some other sports, hockeyreference.com, football reference, those are always good too.
Awesome.
Dave, what are some of your betting targets for the NHL? Do you prefer like game lines, props, parlays? What are some of the things that you like to look at when you're playing?
Games. I like DFS a little bit, and I know you guys do too, and there's certain angles and advantages you can take there. But for the most part, games. I'm looking at teams that played the night before. I'm looking at teams that had to travel. Like the Flyers tonight, having a tough situation, and with Brassard going down, you gotta start to look at. So what I start to do is I start to look at expected win percentages based upon ESPN pumps out a couple stats, and obviously moneypuck.com does, and then I'll weigh them against what the odds are, what Vegas has come out. What that means is, say they're predicting that the Flyers have 55% chance to win. Well, then they should be at least a minus 130 favorite. If they're anything less, you're starting to get true implied odds. So those are the first things I do to, again, cut down the whole slate. Because tonight, the night before Thanksgiving is an NHL bettor's dream, because they usually roll out almost everyone, right? Because they have tomorrow off. So tonight I'm going to look through all the games. I got one already lined up where I think there's some decided disadvantage when I'm looking at those implied odds. But then I'm also going to look at some advanced stats. I like the last 10s when I look at Corsi 4, Fenwick, and expected goal percentage. I want to see what teams are really putting up the shots, but maybe not scoring the goals. And because you guys know, you can hit a bit of a rut. You can have bad luck. So I like the last 10s when I look at those, and meaning the last 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
Season long averages, sure. But if you're betting on that one night, I really like to look at the last 10 and see if some teams have been unlucky lately. And then I'll look at the goalies and the expected save percentages, because that's huge. But as you know, they don't announce goalies until like an hour before the game sometimes. Right. So you got to be careful with the goalies.
That's awesome. Just a real quick follow up on my first question. We had a predictions to win the cup before we So that obviously will in a lot of cases carry over to how we do our betting on a personal level. But I've had Colorado the past 3 years. 3 years back when they were not the favorite, and I just feel like it's their time. And I know they're the favorite, but Dan had picked, and Winnipeg was always in the back of my mind going into this year, because they're just one of those teams that can come at you from nowhere and just go on a run. And they've got just incredible goaltending. And Dan had picked them to win the cup. And I immediately went into FanDuel and put down some money on them at plus 4,100.
Yeah.
Which is now down to plus 2,100.
Yep.
And I've already got a 20% increase cash offer to settle the bet. So, if anybody out there is thinking about placing it, I think, plus 2,100 right now, Winnipeg is a really good option. And
the cash out is tempting, right? But I think, depending, again, we go back to what did you play with? Do you even care about that money? If you don't, you let that ride.
Exactly.
You let it ride.
Exactly. But how is the proliferation of betting sites like DraftKings, FanDuel, Caesars? I mean, how has that helped or hurt your craft?
I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think the best part about it is there's competition. It's just like what Vegas was back in the day. They were, you had to fly there if you wanted to bet football. Otherwise, you did it in the back streets, and nobody wanted to do that. And it just felt dirty. So as soon as they came on the scene and you were able to start doing DFS legally and some other things, it was great. And now that you can bet legally with them, it's awesome. And what I mean, if it was a one company, I think I'd have a little bit more concern with how they can probably dominate the market and maybe skew lines. But because you have all this different information out there, what I like about it is if you like a team, go shop. If you like a game, go look at 3-4 different websites. I guarantee you there's going to be some difference where you're going to be able to get that line better at one site than you can the other three. So I really enjoy that we have a lot of competition in the market. I think it's made it better for all of us. And it's, obviously it's lucrative for all of them. I play on 3. That's what I tend to do right now with Caesars, MGM, and DraftKings. FanDuel, I have just sitting in the corner, and as well as this new Barstool Sportsbook that's out. But I'll try and leverage those 3, and that's why I think it's a good thing having many out there. And it's even better if you look at guys. I don't know if there's a guy out there right now, Pat Mayo, that was just a little blogger for DraftKings. He's turned into probably a millionaire with podcasts because he's got the backing from them. People want to bet. They want to tap into that market. So it's also good for us podcasters out there.
Now, it's funny, real fast, to build on that a little bit. My buddy Drew again, he lives in Maryland. I don't know if Maryland is still, banned from.
Yeah.
So he literally will drive to the state lines and sit in his car in parking lots and work his craft because he can't do it in Maryland. So, the app reads, I guess, from the satellite that he's now sitting in Pennsylvania. And that's how he does it. I mean, I've actually talked to him, and he's like, I'm sitting in my car at Perkins, working right now. So it's funny how it's not all across the country.
And that's funny, Dan, that you mentioned that, because that might hurt him a little bit, because a lot of, professionals, and I don't put myself near that market, love when lines move. If they can just get it at that instant, or even in-game action to offset, where they're at. If he's got to do that probably hurts his craft a little.
Well, he tried to explain it to me, and maybe you can in layman's term. He does middling betting.
Yes.
And he loves to do that. So
a lot of people, they call it middle. And I think we're talking the same thing. Eagles open -3, but it goes up to -6.
Good.
Now you're going to take the other side, right? And hope it falls at 4. Eagles win by 4 or 5.
Yeah. So he's really good at that.
Yeah.
A little funny comment here. Sweet Jesus, it's the perfect evolution of beards. You know what?
Polar Knights, love it.
Yeah, and my Aunt Esther was going to come on. She's got the best one. Sorry, Aunt Esther. That's mean. All right, so Dave, you referenced, we've been talking about DFS. I take pride in my DFS ability with football, and Tony Cotillo, the boss, who's one of the best in the biz, he got me really into DFS basketball. Vance is a basketball expert as well, but I've really done successful with. In fact, I had a really good weekend with DFS football. Last year, I tried just for the show. I really tried to get into hockey. I put some lineups out there. I didn't like totally wet the bed, but it is hard. It is hard. Hockey to me is hard, and I'm going to attribute, whether I'm right or wrong, all the other sports, you're on the field for a long period of time. Hockey, it's shifts, So I gave up on it. I don't want to be, I'm not going to be a phony and tell people to do this, that, or the other when I don't have the confidence like I do with DFS football and basketball. How is it that you are successful? And how are you successful at DFS hockey?
Well, and I'm probably more like you guys. I am heavier in golf is my number one. Then it comes to football, basketball, and hockey. I do play. Baseball is one that I probably tucked away just because man, that's tough. That's every single day, and that's hitters, pitchers. That's a lot of stats you got to get into about certain matchups. With hockey, I still have some decent success with lineup stacking, and it's simple as football as well. You look at the team totals for the day, which games are predicted to have the highest over under, and then start settling in and assessing if that's a game that you want to attack a line stack. Also, the key to me in all DFS hockey is goalie. There's no doubt about it. And that gets funny too when you get into a situation where, you could get called out right before the game. So you got to really keep your eyes on the goalie information right up until game time. Be ready to plug and play if they do pull them. But from that standpoint, I'm looking at teams that pour a lot of shots on the goaltender. I'll take a chance with a guy letting up 3 or 4. I'll live with it if he got 30, 32 saves. But then the guy that gets 18 saves and 1 goal against, he might score less. So I'm really looking at games that are going to have high shot profiles, high expected shot profiles, as well as high scoring. So, and I do stack. I look at 2 or 3 games. I try not to go too far outside of there because, again, in the NHL, it's hard. It's hard. There's so much information out there. And I like what Nick said earlier. Sometimes I stick with the teams I know because once you start picking them in DFS and you start getting used to their lineups, you get accustomed to what the right salary ranges are for certain players.
Now, do you also find, I'm sorry, Vance, do you also find that targeting power play units can sometimes help?
Yes, except, if you're talking DraftKings, they don't really, it helps, but they don't give additional points for power play goals. Where
just for points in general. Just for points in general.
Yahoo does. So yes, I do, but it depends where you're playing. And if you play some other places that do value the power play goal and add a weighted bonus, it's more of a factor. In other cases, I just think penalties and penalty kills, I got to look at referees before the game. And I got to understand if this guy's, going to blow the whistle, if I'm really going to get into it like that. So I don't look at it too much, Dan, from the DFS daily on DraftKings, just because I'm not rewarded as much. Even last night, I felt like the Flyers were on the penalty kill all night. It turned out it was only twice. Now, the one time was a 6-on-5. You could really say that was a third power play. But so it gets, I do, but I don't weight it heavily. How's that?
No, that's fair enough. That's a great answer.
Dave, would you be able to give our viewers a couple of DFS lineups?
Ooh, for tonight. Why don't we come back to that then? Because I do have a couple written down.
Okay.
But I was waiting on a couple quick updates from a couple games. But yeah, I'll give some players. How's that?
Perfect.
I'll give some players.
Perfect.
All right. Fair enough. All right. So enough of this betting nonsense.
Yeah.
Dave is also just a brilliant sports mind, regardless of the betting angle. So I'm going to start off. Knowing how well-rounded you are in sports, what is your take on the Flyers as they look at the present moment? And honestly, I typed that question before last night's game. But so what's your take on the Flyers right now, essentially?
You tell me even before last night's game. I guess I'll have this similar answer. I thought in a way they were slightly overachieving, but then you look at the record and they're only 2 games over 500, I think now. I guess it's the games when you can man up and beat the Washingtons and the Carolinas, even go the Calgarys that have come in, and you really see the potential behind this team. I feel like that's what I'm seeing as a little overachieving and happy about. I think there's a chance that this team can really gel at some point here. And now, barring the injuries, I mean, we've had a lot. The defensive line is just the pairings aren't all squared away yet, so there's still some time to gel. But I've been pleased, put it that way, coming off last year, the disappointing and especially the last 3-4 months of it, to see this team competing and I think actually have a chance for a playoff spot in the Metro. I would put them right now as somewhat above my expectations. How's that? even though I know now we're going Florida, we have a tough stretch coming up. We could be coming home limping real bad, but slightly above expectations right now. I'm slightly pleased.
Now, it's funny, Dave, you used the term last year. And it's kind of like what Dan Campbell did with the tape of the Eagles-Lions game. He buried the tape, right?
Yeah.
Well, we decided to bury the term last year on the show.
Yeah.
But I was, reading some things and some really intelligent hockey people, Jim Jackson included, referenced that last night's game was the closest thing to last year they've seen. Another respected guy is Zach Hindertruck. He put it out there on social media that yesterday's game reminded him of last year. Defensive breakdowns, leaving Carter Hart no chance. And again, I've been accused of picking on Carter Hart. I don't blame him for a thing last night. It was one of the worst defensive zone coverage games I've seen in a long time. So I'm going to ask my crew, starting with Vance Crew. What were your thoughts about last night's game, Vance?
It was listless. I mean,
good word.
It was listless is the best way to call it. Like you said, it was the closest thing that we've seen to last year, this season. The Flyers, right now, it's a long season, guys. It's a long season. And like we said, they're in a really, really tough division. And I think, we got to not get too high, get too low, kind of stay somewhere in the middle. But when you're watching them play right now, like even if you look at the stats, they're better defensively, but they're averaging 1.64 goals per game since October 30th. Like that's not going to get it done at all. I don't care how good Carter Hart is. You can't win games like that. So, we talk about this last 3 games where they've lost, but if you look over the stretch since October 30th, the goals for just haven't been there. And I think that's something that we should really be concerned about because as we've always talked about, they get it done by committee. They don't have that one superstar that they can ride that person's coattails. So that's concerning to me moving forward.
And Nick, one of the things Jim Jackson had mentioned regarding that game and last year was, if you recall the start of last year, and it was a smoke and mirrors kind of start. Vance and I have discussed that many times, that the record was better than their performance. But he said last year the goalies were strong at the beginning, and once the defensive breakdown started, that's when stuff started to go south. And are you concerned? I know it's injury related, but are you concerned about the defensive core and the overall defensive breakdowns?
Yes and no. So, you can only spend so much of your time in your own zone. And what is happening right now is the percentage of each period is being spent in the defensive zone. And I don't care who you have back there defensively. When the majority of the play that's going on is spent in your own zone, you're going to have breakdowns. So it's just going to happen. And you're going to have goalies put in situations where they're not going to be able to make saves. I mean, you can only relate this to like maybe a football analogy where you're starting on your 20 or 30 yard line. You're not getting the first down. You're punting. You're getting the ball back on your 20 or 30 yard line. You're not making any ground. You're punting. And the zone entries have to get better. I mean, we have to me, Dan, guys, this is a very systematic problem that we have right now. And this is going to fall back on the coaching. Elaine Vigneault's system has to be executed. And I know you can say that about a lot of teams, but for the way this team is made up right now, there's only a certain way they're going to be able to produce. And that's going to be systematic on a breakout, clean through the neutral zone and getting into the offensive zone and keeping possession around the perimeter. And then finding gaps and finding ways to get to the net, to score and to attack the net and get rebounds. That's how it's got to happen. And when you play uninspired hockey the way they played last night, totally breaking down everything that they're probably practicing on a daily basis, that's what's going to happen against Tampa Bay. Now, they got to come back and they've got to fix this. And I think they can, because they are more talented than what we're seeing right now. Obviously, if you go back to the first week or two of the season, you know what I'm talking about because they were scoring goals at will. So, they've got to get back to the system. I think that's what happens as you progress through the season. You're going to start to get away from that. But that's to me, that's what the problem is right now. They're not executing the system.
And you can't even use injuries as an excuse because, as Nicky Nutt said at the beginning of the year, this team has brought in so much depth that you can almost compensate for it. And you can't cry because there was no Kucherov or Braden Point last night.
Right.
for Tampa Bay. So, Dave, talk to us about the injuries and how that cannot be used as an excuse.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, last night, the most disgusting part was, just the possession, like you said, Nick. And I mean, I think Corsi 4 for Tampa was 75, 74%. It felt like we were, like you hear that, like we were just never out of the zone.
No.
And even when we tried to make any clears or movement in the middle of the ice, I mean, they were just sitting there ready to pick it off and bring it back in and have a long possession. So that was, it felt lackluster is a great word, but you're right. Injuries can't really be, our penultimate excuse now with all the moves we did in the off season and all the pieces that we've had put in place to really offset that. So I agree with you, because really the standpoint, the most important players were healthy last night, right? Hart was in there, and Dan, you said you're not going to pick on him. I do think maybe one, but yeah, he can't win the game by himself. When I don't know, finally Corey Perry pulls the monkey off his back, right? Scores that first goal. But who was playing the other side of the net? They didn't even go after. He had all day to just perch one top shelf.
I think, but
I think it was. You can't, the old term. You can't play the next pass. You got to play the puck. I agree with you. You can't really call injuries an excuse, especially because their better players are out there. The connect needs to Drew. So yeah, I'm with you.
It's funny when Corey Perry and Patrick Maroon are flying around the ice. Your team's in trouble for the night, because it's like they skate in mud at this stage of their career.
Yep.
All right. Dave, you mentioned that the Flyers have one hell of a gauntlet coming up tonight at Florida, Carolina at our place, and then Nick and I and Vance, we kind of started to fall in love with the Devils last year with the young talent and speed they have on their team and the offseason acquisitions they made. We weren't the only team that made acquisitions. So, I mean, look at that stretch of 3 games. I'll ask all of you guys. We'll start with Dave, Vance, then Nick. What are your thoughts on the series of 3 games, and what are your predictions for points, gentlemen?
I'll go loss, win, tie. I'll go 1-1-1 in those 3. I think, for me, looking at Carolina's, advanced stats and their metrics, I think they're a little overvalued. And maybe that showed when the Flyers did score those 2 third-period goals that last time they played them down there and got a win 2-1. So I kind of like them coming off of a road trip, having that Thanksgiving at home. I think they'll lose tonight, and I don't think it'll be pretty. And then I think tomorrow, I think they'll have enough tape, enough relaxed time to come in fresh on Friday, win Carolina. And then the Devils, no matter what the Devils are, they're tough. And I would take a tie out of there, not a tie, I'm sorry. The overtime point, and we're going to lose in a shootout. So 1-1-1.
Vance.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. He kind of stole my thunder. You have to come out of these 3 games with 3 points. I mean, here's the thing about the Flyers. We said in the beginning of the season that we thought that they can squeak in. This is the time of year when you're in a rut like this. You have to find a way to continue to get points. That's the most important thing, even when you're not playing well, just to stay in the race, because it can get late early. So I think that if there's a way that they can come out of these 3 games with 3 points, I think that's a major success.
And Nick, before you address this, you're also our goaltending whisperer. Now, I want you not only to predict the points, I want you to predict the goalie rotation.
I think Jones is going to go tonight against Florida, and I think they're going to win the game. I do. I love the Flyers tonight. I think it's a bounce back game for them. They saw Florida once already, a game that they kept pretty close. They lost.
Yeah.
And I think they can pull it out tonight. I think they'll play inspired hockey, and I really, to guarantee a win, no, but I think they could pull this one out. I like them, at a +1.5. Really, to be honest with you, I think they can win by 2 or 3 goals tonight. I do. I know it sounds crazy, right? But sometimes that's what you got to look at. You got to look at what could be crazy, and this might be it. You're going to see the unexpected, and then I think they'll lose to Carolina. And you'll see Hart against Carolina and against New Jersey, in my opinion. And I think they're going to struggle against New Jersey. I think they'll have they'll have 2 big games against Florida and Carolina, and then the typical sports psychology ebb and flow comes into play against New Jersey. They'll take them to overtime and lose in the shootout.
And I was thinking,
I'm agree 3 points. 3 points.
Yeah. I'm 3 points was my mindset, and my mindset was like a dual revenge scenario in the first two games. We have a little bit of revenge to deal with Florida because we lost to them in a game. The score didn't indicate how close the game was. For a while, the game was tight. And Carolina has revenge on their mind against us. And like you just said, New Jersey concerns the hell out of me. They owned us. Two bad teams. They played like a solid team against us last year, and they're playing well right now. So I would be happy to get 3 points out of the stretch. So it's similar thinking, not all the same machinations of how we're going to get the points, but as long as we get 3 points, do we feel it's successful? Is that the way we look at it, Vance? Is 3 points successful?
In my opinion, with this team, I think that's a realistic expectation. Okay. I mean, they're playing two teams that we know that are more talented than them.
Okay.
That could possibly be there at the end of the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think that's realistic to expect 3 points out of this 3-game stretch.
All right, fair enough. So, Nick, before we address our next segment, can you tell us who sponsors our next segment, Nick?
Yes, this segment is sponsored by Fuse Barbershop in Newtown, PA. For guys like us with beards, they take care of all that. Great haircuts. Dan, you and I both go there. Great service, great rock and roll theme, music, good barbers, great location, great spot. And we're proud to have them as sponsor of our show.
Yeah, they are the best. And I'm due for a haircut, and I should have got it before Thanksgiving. It's probably too late now. Damn it. All right, Vance, what time is it?
It is time for the penalty box.
All right. So this is a theme that we have done before, but it's been a while. And I believe it's been so long, it was just Nicky Nuts and myself doing the show when we did this theme. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am putting on the screen right now Take Two Who. In theory, Take Two Who, Part 2, because we did this last year. So for those of you that are listening on Apple or Spotify or all the other podcasting stations, what I have are 6 flyers. So the rules are you have to take 1 past flyer and 1 current NHL non-flyer and put them on today's roster to improve this team. Obviously, it's a fantasy from La La Land, but it's just pure fun now. So again, my crew has to pick 1 flyer from yesteryear and 1 current NHL player to make this roster complete. And it doesn't have to be guys that are listed, but for again on the radio, or excuse me, for listening on Spotify or Apple, the flyers from the past listed are Bobby Clark, John LeClair, Eric Lindros, Mark Howe, Eric Desjardins, and Kimmo Timonen. The non-flyers listed are Victor Hedman, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Adam Fox, Cale Makar, and Nick's favorite, Nathan McKinnon. I am going to go with our guests first. Dave, if you were the GM and could pick from this list, and viewers, I want you to chime in as well if you're out there. What pass flyer is needed for this team, and what current NHLer would you put on this team?
Well, I appreciate giving me the softball, but I'll leave Nick's guy, Nathan McKinnon. I would probably go there, but I'll leave you. And I'll start with the Flyers, and it's Lindros for me. I mean, growing up, and I'll say we share the same birthday, so I always loved him just from that standpoint, February 28th. And but he was the guy. He was the guy that was supposed to fix the franchise. We gave it all away, Forsberg, and it was the time that we were just all in as kids growing up. And I still love him. I know we didn't get there with Lindros, but if I'm going to build my, what the promise of Lindros was, and just the big physical nature that and freak that he really is. Take Bobby Clark out of the equation, maybe we even do get a win. But I'll take Lindros as my flyer. As one of the current non-flyers, and I got to think it can work. As much as I wanted to sit here and take a winger, I would even love to take Kucherov potentially. But I'll take McDavid. I'll find a way for, the big bruteness and just the absolute skillfulness of McDavid to blend together. I mean, that one goal he had earlier this year when he split all 5 defenders and somehow hit the game winner with it, less than a minute.
Rangers, right?
Did it twice.
Yeah, he's amazing on the skates, amazing on the stick. I think he would pair it well. I mean, we all knew Lindros had soft hands. He was good with the pass too. I think they could pair it well.
And Dave, also you have to keep in mind, Eric Lindros's game easily transfers to today's hockey, and it's not as physical or dirty as it was when he played. So imagine his skill set in today's game.
True. Yeah, there's
no
Scott
Tony
Stevens.
Twist, no Tony Twist running after him, trying to force him to fight. There's no goons on the other team. Tom Wilson, I don't think would scare Eric Lindros a bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'll cheat now. I was gonna go Lindros McDavid too. So I'm out because
I got the softball.
Yeah, we picked the same players.
Yeah.
Mr. Smooth, you're up.
So for me, this team is struggling to score goals, right? So there's one guy on this list for the past Flyers that stands out above everybody, and that's John LeClair.
Yeah.
I think he would be the perfect fit, on a team like this, a guy that can rifle it, score from out in front of the net on tap-ins. He was just a phenomenal goal scorer. And if I were to pair him with one of these current players, I would pair him with Connor McDavid. I think Connor McDavid is one of those players who raises everybody's level of play offensively. And if LeClair played with McDavid, he probably would score 70 goals in today's NHL. So I think that would be a phenomenal combination on your first line. And like I said, I think McDavid, he raises everyone's level of play around him. So those are my two.
And real fast, Vance, when I did this when I did this type of Take Two Who segment many, many months ago, I think a viewer chimed in, LeClair is too slow for today's NHL. And I totally disagree. He was not a bad skater.
No, he was a good skater.
Right.
I felt like he wasn't a speed demon, but he had no trouble getting to his spots on the ice. And I don't think that would be any different today.
I'm glad you're in agreement. Mr. Scout.
I think we're all going offense because, of the need, and it's borderline desperate right now. But, given the fact that we had solidified our defense in the offseason, there are some really can you imagine Hedman manning a blue line for us, or, even the speedsters like Fox and McCarr and guys with all that skill set on the power play? God, it's hard to turn those guys away. But yes, all things considered, our offense is lackluster, and that's where I would have to go right now if I had to take two. I don't know if I could pass on Eric Lindros. He's one of my favorite Flyers of all time, even, through all the bad and the good that it had, had gone on through that era that he was here. But he just brings everything. He's an all tools player, physicality, leadership, skill set, speed, the ability to get to the net, the ability to manage the game. So I think it would be hard to turn him down. And, if there was a gun to my head, I would have to go with McDavid, although I feel like McKinnon just was built to be a Flyer. Like, he is just everything about him would fit the orange and black to a T. He's our kind of player, where I think McDavid honestly would be too good for this team right now. He's probably too fast for us. I don't know.
Come on, guys, by himself. Catch up.
He'd be playing by himself.
That's funny.
That is.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for indulging my little fantasy here. Take Two Who. We're going to have to revisit that. You notice how I had probably the three greatest defensemen in Flyers history on that list. I don't think it's even arguable because I don't think Pronger played long enough. And Hal, Desjardins, and Timonen. So if you really thought defense was a liability, which perhaps last year you might have gone Mark Howe and say Connor McDavid, right, based on how last year went before we picked up, Ellis and company. So, ladies and gentlemen, I can't thank my good friend Dave Gloeckner enough. Dave, it was an absolute pleasure. We have to do this more than just occasionally.
That'd be great. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys. I just like talking, with similar minds. It's great stuff.
Yeah, and again, I encourage everyone to check Dave out at D Glock. All his shows are listed in his profile. Betting for Breakfast. If you want to see two guys that just talk sports like it's sipping coffee, well, they are betting for breakfast. So it's just a great, great show. So on behalf of my crew, Vance crew, and Nick the Scout Tosti, I am Dan Green. Again, check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, And thank you so much to our new teammates, Flyers Extreme on Facebook. And ladies and gentlemen, we have the Florida Panthers tonight. Excuse me, the Florida Panthers tonight, the Hurricane Friday, and the Devils Sunday. So enjoy these next 3 games of hockey. Perhaps Nick and I will be back for a Flyers recap on Sunday morning. But till then, good night, good hockey. Stay well, stay safe, and most importantly of all, enjoy your family. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Stay well, everyone.